Hi everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Cook the World. We're in the middle of a pandemic right now, and I have had the great pleasure of living in one of the most multicultural cities in the world. Toronto has a whole lot of different cuisines that are available to us through restaurants, through just communities that have moved here over the years. And I've been able to enjoy a lot of these cuisines over the course of my life living here. Except now that we're in the middle of a pandemic and we have a stay-at-home order in the province of Ontario, we can't exactly go out for a lot of these foods anymore. I mean, there's still some that are doing delivery or takeout, but a lot of the restaurants that I used to go to, I might stop on the way home from school or on the way home from work. There isn't really as much that is available to us anymore, and there definitely is a little bit of a sense of I should not be going to this place that is very far away from my home, even though it's still in Toronto because of the stay-at-home order. So I've decided to start a project in which I am going to learn all the things that I used to enjoy, plus other foods. I'm probably going to be hitting countries that I've either never been to before or where the cuisine is not available in Toronto, and I do want to experiment with those kinds of foods. So for today's episode, I'm actually going to do a recipe that I have done before. It is called Inari Sushi. This recipe is from Just One Cookbook. I will post links to several recipes that I use in the description. There is a recipe for the Inari Sushi itself. There is a recipe for Inari Age, which is the sweetened tofu pocket that Inari Sushi is put in. And there is a recipe for abuuraage, which is actually the unsweetened version of the pocket before it becomes Inari Age. Much more convenient if you can get yourself to an Asian grocery store and get this pre-made. But because I did want to avoid taking many grocery trips this week because we are under a stay-at-home order, I am actually going to be making the Inari Age from scratch. I'm going to be deep frying the tofu, and then I'm going to be seasoning it. And then the part at the end, which is the part that I have done before, is simply assembling with sushi rice. And I'm going to put a little furikake in there. I do enjoy it with some rice seasoning. To get started, I have a massive piece of tofu. So basically I'm just going to slice this up into fairly thin slices. Now in Just One Cookbook's recipe, she doesn't really say how thin the slices should be, but when I have bought Inari Age in the past, it has come fairly thin. So I'm going to probably cut this slice, or this piece of tofu, into about 1/4 inch slices or so. We'll see how that works out. If these pockets don't turn out, there's really no further that I can go with this. I'm sorry, I'm not June or anything. I do not do this quickly, nor do I do this well. Oh no. That's okay, we should still probably get a good 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we should probably get a good dozen still. I don't know if any of you in the audience have a deep fryer. We don't. We're probably not gonna get one anytime soon. It's probably a bit dangerous for us. Got a bit of a deep-ish deep fry pan here. I'm just gonna put a couple of inches of oil into the pan. So another bit of equipment that you probably want for this recipe is a candy or oil thermometer. The lady at Just One Cookbook, she does recommend that you make sure that the temperature is as close to the ideal as possible, because you are going to need to fry these twice. Once to get it to puff up a little bit, the second time to actually make sure it's deep fried. So if you do have a candy or oil thermometer, you can make sure the 2 frying temperatures are as accurate as possible. I don't have this equipment, so I'm just going to be winging this. A frying temperature of about 200 to 250. I have a meat thermometer here. It's not a great meat thermometer. It is an instant read, but it's kind of old. We are sitting at about 220 or so, so I'm actually just going to turn that down a little bit. I'm just going to take a couple of these pieces of tofu and start to fry them. That sounds nice. Honestly, I just like watching things fry. So it's starting to puff up a little bit. Okay, that's starting to get a little bit more golden. not supposed to be full on golden. Making it golden brown comes in the second frying. And so what inspired me to make this particular dish, there is a place near me called Taro's Fish. They have a number of exceptional Japanese groceries there, as well as some Japanese takeout. And one of my favorite things from that place is it's Inari Sushi. And for the longest time I actually had no idea what the name of this thing was called. We sort of called them rice pillows for the longest time because we had no idea what the name for them was. Because that's what they basically look like at the end. You'll see that once we're done, they basically look like tofu pillows that are stuffed with rice. And thankfully there are wonderful resources out there, particularly for various types of East Asian cooking. Just One Cookbook is my friend's favorite resource for Japanese cooking, and my friend and I, they've really introduced me to a lot of Japanese culture, Japanese food. We've made things like sukiyaki together. Whole lot of fun, whole lot of work. So I'm probably not going to do that on this channel, but maybe we'll see when I start revisiting countries, because I'm probably going to do that at some point after I hit maybe 50 countries. We'll see. We'll see how this goes. Sort of fried. I'm honestly not quite sure what this is supposed to look like. My general impression is just kind of fried. So some of these are starting to look like they're popping up. They're certainly looking like they're frying. And because they're going to be fried again, I'm going to try taking them out now. So I mean, they're definitely looking fried. Like they're starting to brown a little bit around the edges. Maybe a little cruder than what you'll see in the store, but that's part of the fun of this. So when you fry these, you're going to notice that that when it starts getting fried, the pieces of tofu are going to actually start to float. This is the point at which I am taking them out for the first fry. Right now I'm beginning to understand why people buy these pre-made. So also this recipe is very, very easy if you already have pre-made inari abuuraage and pre-made sushi seasoning. Of course, I'm the dolt who's going to be making everything from scratch today. So all of our tofus have been fried once. You can see there's a little bit of golden brown around the edge. That's really the criterion I've been using to see if they're done the first round. I'm going to try to get this oil up to about 350 or 400 degrees Fahrenheit. And then we're going to fry these again. Oh, okay, that's making scary sounds. Okay, so this is probably why you want a cane thermometer or an oil thermometer. I think this is now too high for the speed thermometer to actually measure. It started giving me an error message saying high temperature, do not like. So I can't use that anymore, but I do know at this point it is above 300. So I am going to wait a little bit to maybe get a little bit higher. And we're going to see how this works, because I do not have a thermometer that goes that high. Because, yeah, I'm just looking at the sheath, and yeah, most meats that you want to cook, they want to be below 200 Fahrenheit. That actually makes sense to me. Oh, there we go. That's what I'm talking about. I love deep frying things. It's so terrifying and so satisfying. So you want these to fry until they're golden brown, ideally puffing up a little bit more, and what you're really aiming for is that big air pocket in the middle. So I think this should go pretty quickly, a lot more quickly than the original fry. And yeah, again, you're going to notice that they first sink to the bottom, and then they're going to rise up to the top, and you'll get a very good look at the color they're starting to show. Maybe I had them slightly too high, because these aren't really looking like pockets to me, but we'll see once they cool down. Yeah, here you can see the difference between the two fries. This one's definitely golden brown. These ones are still kind of pale and tofu-like. A couple pieces in there I need to fry for a little bit longer. I'll do the second half in a moment. So as you can see, it's a little bit chaotic in there. But yeah, you're noticing this guy over here. He's starting to rise. Starting to get kind of golden brown at the corner. Apparently also nearly dropping my tongs. So you probably noticed I'm not the best cook in the world, or at least not the most graceful cook in the world sometimes. I've probably gotten oil all over the counter at this point. I'll clean up before we actually start stuffing these things. So we'll make do. That's sort of what this quarantine has been about for me, particularly when it comes to food. We'll make do. You are supposed to kind of boil these afterwards to try to get a lot of the oil out. You don't want the entire thing just tasting like oil. So what you want for the rice, if you're not familiar with sushi rice, you want a short-grained Japanese rice. And it can often be labeled as sushi rice in the grocery store. Again, particularly if you have Asian grocery stores, you will want to get that. Calrose is a bit of an interesting one. Calrose is an all-purpose table rice that can often be used in, yes, a lot of Asian dishes, including some Japanese dishes, but also in European dishes. It can often be used as a substitute for arborio in risotto, peas in paella. So you can get Calrose. Be a little bit careful with Calrose, or, I mean, again, we're making do right now. If you find the medium grain Calrose, it's not the end of the world. But really for sushi rice, if you want to go for an authentic texture, you want the polished short grain Japanese rice. And the Calrose still has a bit of that kind of glutinous sticky rice feel to it. So it's a decent substitute if you can't find sushi rice. I'm going to cook about 2 cups of rice. If you have sushi seasoning, great. By all means use it. It's very convenient to have it around, particularly if you are making sushi on a regular basis. I don't have sushi seasoning, so I will be making it myself. So I'm just going to set that to boiling. Once it boils, I'm just going to set it to low, put a lid on it, and then leave it for about 20-25 minutes. So these have kind of been patted down. They're a little bit less, actually, no, they're still pretty oily. So I'm just going to shove them into this water. Probably a good thing I'm not making like a few dozen of these, because last time I made these, I made about 32 of them. Even with the help of my friends who live in the house with us and my husband, I definitely wound up eating maybe 20 of them in a single day. It was not a very good idea. Oh, so much oil. So oily. Just gonna stick them and set them boiling for a few minutes. And then once they're done with that, I'll let them cool, I'll drain them out. I'll see if I can make pockets out of them. For the Inari Sushi, so it's going to be loosely inspired by Just One Cookbook. You're going to need some mirin, some soy sauce. I've also added some additional sugar or rice vinegar or salt. It really depends on how sweet you want it, or like what the flavoring for that tofu pocket is going to be, because this is really going to be the primary flavor in your Inari sushi. You are using this liquid to moisten your hands when you are working with the rice, so it does get infused into the rice. You're basically soaking the tofu in it. So do what you will with this mixture to your taste. Definitely the recommendation from Just One Cookbook, I remember being very good. I'm just kind of winging it right now. That's going to boil soon. Alright, so the rice has been set to low, it's been covered. I'm going to wait about 20-25 minutes. I did take a little taste of the seasoning for the tofu. It's quite nice right now. It's a little bit more acidic than I'd like. I did add a little bit of rice vinegar to it on top of the mirin. You could just do straight mirin. I'm going to add a little bit of sugar to it. I think I'm done with the soy sauce. There's enough soy sauce in there. But I have noticed that sometimes you probably want... Oh, okay, that's boiling over. You probably want more of the tofu seasoning than you think you want, because it does use up a fair bit. Your hands kind of absorb into the rice. It's nice to really have your own recipe after a point, one that you really like. A lot of what I usually wind up using recipes for is to really get the texture right, or to get a good sense of what the flavor should be. That's quite nice. For the sushi seasoning, it's mostly rice vinegar, salt, and sugar. Again, proportions are up to your discretion to an extent, but definitely if you look online, there are plenty of people who will offer what the ratio should be between the three. Now, it's sometimes recommended to cook this a little bit. just to make sure that the salt and the sugar dissolve in it. I'm probably not going to do that. Last time I did this, I basically acetic acid bombed my entire house. Anytime anybody tried to come into our apartment or anywhere close to the kitchen, they would just get bombarded with vinegar in the air, basically burn their sinuses. So I'm not going to do that today. I might just make sure that this is mixed a little bit, or I might stick it in a pot and put it on very low heat for a very short period of time. So that's now been boiled, it's been drained. I'm going to wait for it to cool a bit before I put it into the seasoning. And I'm just going to plop it into that bowl, let it season for a bit. I probably have about 3/4 of a cup of mirin in there, maybe a 1/4 cup of rice vinegar, a 1/4 cup of sugar, and maybe about 1/2 cup of soy sauce. Yeah, if I do start a blog, I'll definitely write down my recipes instead of what I normally do and just kind of, well, really kind of wing it. And yeah, as I suspected, completely did not turn into a pocket. So I'm gonna have to cut very gently. And there, I kind of cheated, but you know, you have a little tofu pocket. I think next time I'm gonna suck it up and make it to my Korean/Japanese grocery store. This is a little much. Okay, rice seasoning is in. I'll take my rice paddle and fluff it up a little bit. There are definitely multiple ways to actually stuff these. Some people will stuff them with more than just rice. I tend to like them with just rice, so that's what I'm going to be doing today. So I've here some furikake rice seasoning. You don't need to have this in Inari Sushi. I find it tastes better. There also are suggestions in Just One Cookbook to actually wrap the rice that you're going to put in there in nori seaweed. It just gives it a little bit more depth. I'm going to get a little bit of that sushi. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to get a little bit of that sushi rice. Stick it on my cutting board, and before I get myself all messy with rice, which I already am halfway there, I'm going to open this. Okay, I need to wash my hands. I've got furikake covered sushi rice right now. I've got these pockets that I kind of cheated at because it didn't puff up. And then I've got my my Inari Sushi or Inari Age seasoning over here. You'll notice there's still bits of tofu in there. Those are the ones I couldn't turn into pockets, but I'm going to use them for other purposes. So just making sure that I get my hands nice and covered in the seasoning. You want to form this into a little ball of rice. Just open up that pocket. And this is what you store by, people. Isn't so much of a ball as a glob right now. That is breaking the pocket, but that's okay because it will be tasty. All right, so I'm gonna try this again with maybe a little bit less rice, see if it will, I think even that's too much, see if it won't just fall apart on me again. Better, but like you'll notice it's cracking, like it's not even that much rice in there. So definitely as a suggestion, if you do have an Asian grocery store nearby, particularly if you do have a Japanese or Korean grocery store nearby, because at least in Toronto a lot of Korean grocery stores tend to carry Japanese ingredients. Yeah, buy your own at least the abuuraage, there are some people who complain that the seasoning for the Inari is way too sweet. So you may want to create your own seasoning instead. But yeah, for the abuuraage, I'd say this is not really worth doing on your own, unless you're really experienced or are, I guess, really a bit of a nut like I am. I think next time I make these, I am going to buy the abuuraage at least, and maybe from there make my own seasoning, because I did find last time there wasn't enough seasoning in the package for me to dip my hands in and assemble all of it together. So yeah, let's try this out. So it is pretty good. The seasoning I think I got relatively right. Maybe a 2-to-1 ratio mirin to soy sauce. If you want a little bit sweeter, you can add sugar. If you want a little bit more tart, you can add rice vinegar, but I'd say if you have a 1-to-1 ratio of basic vinegar stuffs to soy sauce, it's too much soy sauce. And definitely take a look at Just One Cookbook if you want any sort of Japanese inspired dishes. And if you live in Toronto, maybe stop by Taro's Fish. They do have some very good stuff, and I do very much like supporting local businesses during the pandemic, because this is hitting them pretty hard. So yeah, that's Japan this week. I very well might touch Japan again. That's it for this week on Cook the World, and I will see you next week. Goodbye.